Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good, from science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and it is my privilege to be here today on a Tuesday with the world's greatest listeners. They have made us, of course, a top 10% podcast globally. You can reach us, as usual, at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. Remember to share the love, share the buff, give us a 5-star review, hit subscribe or like, or smiles or happy thoughts, or whatever the thing is on your podcast player that lets us know that we are doing for you what you need and delivering you all the buff-niggly goodness that you deserve. Please do that. That would be a wonderful thing. Tell a friend to listen, and we will give you a free episode. And remember, somewhere in the show notes is a place to buy me a coffee, and you can do that if you would like. So, all right. You all knew this was coming. We talked a while back about, I've done some episodes in the past about the first couple chapters of Genesis, and but I haven't gotten to chapter 4, which is Cain and Abel, and I think we've done some stuff on Noah way back, and I forget what episode that was, and we did stuff on the first 2 chapters with creation, and chapter 3 a couple weeks ago. Okay, here's where we are with the Genesis stuff. The story is, if you're following along at home, what do they say? If you're keeping score at home, here's the current lay of the land. In chapters 1 and 2, God, who makes good things, that's pretty much understanding who the nature of God is. He makes good things, and we are made in his image. He makes the world and all that is in it, including mankind. Adam, sometimes called the man, like Adam, you're the man, right? So this is the man. That's what Adam translates to. The man is placed in the garden, and then his wife, who is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, Adam's helpmate. She's eventually called Eve, and the mother of all the living. She is made from a part of Adam, part of the man, and they live together in the garden. And the cunning serpent asks if they can or cannot eat from the trees in the middle of the garden. It's unclear if he's talking about the tree of life or the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He gets Eve confused. He rattles her, I guess is the right way. She answers dutifully, but is tricked by the serpent into thinking things that are untrue. She sees that the fruit is pleasing to the eye and good for food, and the tree is desirable for gaining wisdom. So she takes the food, the fruit of the tree, and she eats it, and she gives some to the man who was with her, and he does that too. And at this point, the wheels come off the cart. God finds out there are consequences, both personal and relational, for the serpent, the woman, and the man, and they have to leave the garden. And that brings us to chapter 4, the story of Cain and Abel. And this is a relatively short chapter here. It's like 2 pages or page and a half, something like that. And that includes all the explanatory notes and things. So we're going to go through that today, and we'll discuss what it means, what it doesn't mean, how you can apply that, what you should think about this thing, and how you should contemplate whether you're Cain or Abel or Adam or Eve or anyone else in the story that is around there, and how you should use this to help direct your life. Right? So the translation I'm using here is the New American Bible Revised Edition, 1986, because it's the one that's here on my desk. There's a zillion translations out there. They're all very similar with regard to this story. Pick the one that you like. I'm not going to get in an argument about which one should be right or not. That's not my place here. I want you to read the story, understand it, and know it, because it is a foundational text for your civilization. So, chapter 4, verse 1. The man had intercourse with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain, saying, I have produced a male child with the help of the Lord. Okay, fairly straightforward. Cain's name here is a little bit of Hebrew wordplay. We've talked about that in the past. The name Cain means something like to produce or to acquire. So Eve here expresses gratitude that she has produced offspring with the help of the Lord. She has produced Cain. She has produced what she has produced, which is kind of redundant there. But, he is what he is, and perhaps that's maybe that might even be wordplay with Yahweh being I am who am. Anyway, you recall in chapter 3 of verse 15, in verse 15 of chapter 3, which was the previous story, that God promised that the seed of the woman would strike at the serpent. So Eve is excited that she has produced something that possibly can turn the tails on the serpent that got her kicked out of the garden. Next verse. Next, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Abel became a herder of flocks, and Cain a tiller of the ground. So there's a second son that comes into the picture here, but no real statement of excitement or celebration. This second son motif is common in Scripture. The second son, often pushed aside by society, actually rises to become more favored. So this happens a lot in the Bible. The stories of Isaac and Jacob, Joseph, David, the prodigal son. These are all stories of things being of standard principles of societal relations, maybe get inverted, and the second son kind of rises. And this is the first example of that because it's only in the 4th chapter of Genesis. Verse 3. In the course of time, Cain brought an offering to the Lord from the fruit of the ground, while Abel, for his part, brought the fatty portion of the firstlings of his flock. So remember, Cain is I guess I'll think of him as a horticulturist. He plants and grows and harvests, and Abel is more of he's a herdsman. All right, he takes care of his flocks. Both the brothers make offerings here based upon their respective roles and jobs. They have things to do, and they make offerings from their position. And I think this is, that's what you do. I should not make an offering based upon what somebody else is doing. I should do it based upon who I am in my unique manifestation of Imago Dei. The fatty portion, this is, Abel brought the fatty portion of the firstlings of his flock. The fatty portion is the good stuff. And I don't know how you think about that. Our current highly hyper health focused, we should eat lean meat, right? That's how we think of it. But the fatty portion is the good stuff. If you've ever eaten prime rib, and let's hope you have, because it is prime, it is good stuff. Keep in mind, the best part of the prime rib is the crown. It's that piece. There's a piece on the top, on the edge, on the outside it's a little fattier, but it is the best stuff. The taste is stupendously better. You can do science on this, okay? The molecules that hold the flavor, and guys have done this. This is what food scientists guys do. The flavor molecules are all carried in fat. And that's why cooking in oils is so important, because it brings these things out and allows them to move around and mix and do all those kinds of things. Marbled meats are prized because of the flavor that the fat brings. If you have really, really lean meat, it can be flat in taste, and it's not good. So Abel has brought the fatty portions from the firstlings, the top lambs from his flock. He's brought them, and he's brought the best parts, the best of the best is what he's brought. Now, Cain's offering doesn't seem to quite be his best effort. I think that's what we're supposed to take from this, at least from what's going to follow. It is the fruit from the ground, is what my translation says. And on one hand, this is consistent with his vocation. He is a tiller of the ground. He grows things that, in the ground, and the fruit would be of the ground. You could say that this is fruit of the ground, but notice that he didn't bring the first fruits. Okay, that's a term that shows up in the Bible often. They're the first fruits, which are the best ones. Okay, the ones that Cain brings, they're not called the first fruits. They're just called fruits, and we don't know if they're figs or if they're pears or if it's barley. We don't have any idea, but we just know it's fruits from the ground. All right. But notice what these are and what they are not. Okay, it seems to me it's possible that these are literally fruits of the ground. Okay, sometimes when you go to an orchard, you may go to an orchard like a peach orchard or an apple orchard, and there are fruits that have fallen from the tree and they are on the ground. That's a possibility, and thus it's possible to collect some fruits from your stash of fruit wherever you're growing them and have them be blemished or bruised or not quite perfect because you quite literally picked them up off the ground. And if that is what Cain did by providing fruit of the ground, then this is really not his best effort. These you can go to like the Harry and David catalog, or if you go, those are great Christmas gifts because you get these pears that are out of this world, and apples that are perfect, and oranges the size of your head, and so you get those things. The Harry and David fruits, those are the first fruits, and they are not of the ground. They weren't just lying around. These were ones that were cultivated especially to be given as gifts. So I don't know exactly what Cain did here, what his sacrifice was, but it appears to be that it was not top of the line. And if so, what follows next might not have been unexpected. I doubt this is. Some people have said that these two verses here are an indictment of farming compared to ranching. I don't think that follows. I don't think keeping animals is a more noble pastime than keeping plants. Indeed, Adam, the man, was a horticulturalist in the garden before the fall. His job was to tend the garden. So it doesn't make sense to blame the rejection of Cain's offering simply as a rejection of him being a tiller of the ground compared to being a shepherd. So I think that's a pretty easy one to throw out. I think his sacrifice or his offering was not quite, it just wasn't up to snuff. It was like, Cain, you can do better. Okay. So regardless of the nature of his offering and how he did it, Abel seemed to be the top-notch offering. Okay. And the Lord looked with favor. This is the conclusion of that verse in the next one. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry and dejected. So this is a problem, and this is the source of the problem here. Okay, God gives Abel the old thumbs up, and he gets a smiley star or a like, whatever it is for his offering. But Cain does not get looked on with favor. He does not get the notoriety or the blessing or whatever it is that he doesn't. His offering is not looked on with favor, and Cain becomes two things. He becomes angry and dejected. Some other translations read something like Cain was very angry, and the expression on his face fell, or Cain became very angry and his countenance fell. You can pick your favorite there, but they all kind of say the same thing. He's got two things going on. He's got anger, and his self-esteem, his perception of himself has fallen. His face fallen. He's sad. He's got depression things coming on. He wanted to do better. All right. Now we saw in chapter 3 with the garden with Adam and Eve, we saw emotions of shame and perhaps fear. Adam and Eve hid because they were ashamed, right? But this anger thing that Cain is feeling, this is a new thing. This is the first time that shows up first time it shows up on the planet, right? I mean, this is a new thing, and the question becomes: at whom is Cain angry? Right? Maybe he doesn't really know. Is he mad at God? Perhaps he could be, because maybe Cain thought that he was doing what was right. Maybe Cain was like, "Well, dude, this is what I thought you asked for. I did what I was supposed to do, and what's the big deal?" So it is surprising to me how many people get mad at God. But maybe Cain was mad at God. Could he have been mad at Abel? Abel was just doing his job. Abel didn't cause this problem. So who is it that Cain is angry at? And I think if you've worked if you've had kids, if you've lived on this planet, if you've lived as a human being, you would probably come to conclude that Cain is actually mad at Cain. Cain knew that he wasn't giving his best effort, so he gets angry when it becomes apparent that he has not done what he should have done. He's been found wanting, for lack of a better term. He is not living up to his telos. He can do better. He knows he has fallen short, and he has missed the mark. He has sinned, and thus he feels rejected. His countenance falls. He feels dejected. He feels shame. And it's really important here to note that this is what sin does to us. Our turning away from God allows others to whisper into our ears. This spirit of Satan is now alive and thriving here outside the garden. And here is another example of how Satan works. We've seen this over and over and over again with regard to our discussion of sin. First, before the sin, Satan tells us that we should be able to do something what we know isn't right. In this case, he convinces Cain that his insufficient offering will be okay. It's okay to pick up the fruit off the ground. I mean, come on. What's God going to do with it? He doesn't need to eat it. Just do the thing. Put it in the basket. Put it up there. It'll be all right. All right? Or he says, you don't want to take the really good stuff and put it up there because then you don't get to eat it. And that's a bad thing. You worked out really hard to get this stuff. Why would you just sacrifice it? That seems like a bad idea. So Satan convinces Cain that his insufficient offering will be okay. Or he tells us that it's okay to lie. Or he tells us it's okay to cheat. Or whatever we're tempted to do, he says it'll be okay because. And Satan waits for you. He waits for you to find a thing that you want, and then he helps convince you that the thing you want will be okay because, and we fill in the excuse. So things go south after you try to make that justification, and then we have to face reckoning. Satan turns around at this point and he points at us and he says, how could you have been so stupid? What were you thinking? Wow, you really suck. Your brother Abel did it right, but you screwed up. You are a sorry excuse for a human being. And then you feel shame. And what do? You turn further and further away from God. So that causes us to feel dejected, to feel shame, and to let our countenance fall. That's the state that Cain is in at this point. But the question has got to remain, there's other people here in the story, and who is in Cain's corner? It turns out it's God. Is God telling Cain that he sucks? The next two verses often seem to be missing when people tell the story, but they're key to understanding the full thing, okay? Keep in mind, the point of the story of Genesis is to reveal the nature of God, reveal the nature of man, and reveal the nature of the relationship between God and man. And the crux of that relationship shows up here in verses 6 and 7, the next ones, okay? So Cain was angry and very dejected. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why are you dejected? If you act rightly, you will be accepted. But if not, sin lies in wait at the door. Its urge is for you, yet you can rule over it. God is not angry here. He's not punishing Cain. He is asking Cain to really look at the situation and realize that he can do better. Why are you angry? Why are you dejected? Okay, this is God as counselor. If you act rightly, you will be accepted. The Hebrew word here means lifted up. Cain will be accepted and lifted up. His face will no longer be thrown down. That's what dejected means. His face will no longer be thrown down, but rather it will be lifted up. His countenance will not have fallen. All of this, if you act rightly, you will be accepted. This is God as he who provides direction. And then God gives a pleading warning. But if not, sin lies in wait at the door. Your bad behavior, you're not giving your full effort. Okay, it takes you to a place where you can be within reach of sin, within reach of being turned away from God. Its urge is for you. Sin seeks you. Satan is trying to take you. Be on guard, my beloved Cain. Don't let sin get you. This is a warning. This is a plea. This is God as Father. and then an affirmation and an encouragement. Yet you can rule over it. You can do this, Cain. You can overcome this urge that sin has for you. You can do all of this if you act rightly. This is God as best friend. All this in 2 little verses that seem to get lost between God rejected Cain's offering and the path that Cain decides to choose. Cain hears God say these things. Verse 8 says, Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let us go out in the field." When they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. So Cain wants to get away from anyone nearby. What did they talk about when they were walking out there? I guess it doesn't matter what Cain used to kill Abel. A rock, a hoe, a stick, his hands. There's no need for graphic details. A heinous deed, all done. Now what? Look what Cain's sin did. It was one of the 7 deadly sins. I think it's envy. Abel's offering was accepted. Why not mine? I want mine accepted. Abel must be the problem. Look at the errors in this logic. Once one turns away from God, even the ability to think rationally, to use our rational faculties, the most valuable gifts that we have as being Imago Dei, the ability to use our connection to the Logos gets corrupted. We no longer have that connection to the mind that built the universe. We have that with our logic, with our rationality, right? Abel's not the problem here. God will look favorable upon your gifts if you act rightly. This is not a zero-sum game. God's bounty is there for everyone. Cain's reaction gets replayed over and over and over again. We see it all the time. Resentment over other people's good fortune, resentment over other people's achievement, resentment over other people's work ethic. Abel did good work, and he did what was good. Cain took a shortcut and got called out for it. God pointed out the path to Cain. This is what you can do. Cain ignored it. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. Abel didn't taunt Cain. Abel didn't condescend to Cain. Abel didn't pile on Cain's dejection. Abel is completely innocent in this story. Yet Cain, who has been shown the path to also receive favor, instead decides to bring down the one that he incorrectly assumes to be his rival. He takes down an innocent person who is just doing the right thing. He takes down his brother. Verse 9, then the Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" He answered, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" God again with the questions, and Cain feigns ignorance. Really? You didn't know where he was? The word brother shows up 7 times in this chapter referring to Cain and Abel. I looked up a lot of translations of this verse. Almost all of them say keeper. One says guardian. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I to guard my brother? Am I to know where he is and help him do what he's supposed to do? Yes, dude, you are brother's keeper. Guardian is what brother implies. Cain lies. He says he doesn't know. He shows no remorse. Cain shirks his responsibility as brother. Nowhere does he say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." Just like Adam and Eve before him, when God asked them the questions, Cain refuses to accept his guilt in this situation. Read these 2 chapters in the light of what the sacrament of confession provides to you, what it allows you to do. God gives Adam and Eve and Cain the opportunity to own up to their shortcomings. But both Adam and Eve and Cain refused to take the path toward reconciliation. Hell is a door locked from the inside. And then God said, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are banned from the ground that opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. If you till the ground, It shall no longer give you its produce. You shall become a constant wanderer on the earth. I wondered about this section of this story for as long as I can remember. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. The ground opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Keep in mind the provision against drinking blood. Abel's blood is now in the ground. The ground has drunk Abel's blood, has consumed his life force. The ground will not give you its produce. It has been rendered unusable. And at this point, Cain realizes he's in over his head. Verse 13, Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is too great to bear. Look, you have now banished me from the ground. I must avoid you and be a constant wanderer on the earth. Anyone may kill me at sight. And on to the remorse and the hyperbole. Cain has been banished from the ground, from the earth. He's been banished. And he's turned away from God. Where else can he be? Where else can he go? He's stuck between two worlds. I keep thinking about sin as punishment versus sin as consequence. We did that in episode 240, for those of you who want to go back and reread it, re-listen. The warning signs were there all along. God is constantly telling people the correct path, warning against doing the wrong thing. And then people go down the wrong path and they wonder why things go wrong and they are terrified by the outcome. I think God keeps saying, I tried to tell you. I guess that's kind of how I see a lot of scripture is like, I gave you all this stuff and you keep screwing it up. Like I just listened to the plan, followed the plan, trust the plan. And, we have knowledge of good and evil. We've decided, oh, no, I know better. I know better. So Cain is upset that anyone may kill him at sight. Not so, the Lord said to him. If anyone kills Cain, Cain shall be avenged 7 times. So the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one would kill him at sight. Cain then left the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So the Lord puts a mark on Cain, probably some kind of tattoo. I don't know. I always imagine that it was like a tattoo on his forehead that says, warning, do not touch, or like God will avenge this guy's death. I mean, what do you put on there? I don't know, some kind of tattoo or something that everybody sees when they see Cain. They're like, yeah, don't mess with that guy. Okay. It's another warning to people who can't seem to determine the right path. They now know good and evil. People have now come to understand that there is good and evil, to know evil. And I keep thinking of this idea that I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. At this point, they got to be thinking, it was really nice in the garden. I wish I wouldn't have eaten that fruit. This seems like this has been a bad direction. He goes to Nod, the land of Nod, east of Eden. There's the line about east of Eden is the title of a Steinbeck novel called East of Eden. And that's when I hear things like that, the story has lots of alliteration, it's allegorical. It is a lot of associations with the Genesis story. Okay. So if you don't know your scripture, then you can't read Steinbeck. What, 2.5 millennia later? I mean, how old is this story? This is like the oldest story in history. And you can't read Steinbeck, a modern great novel. You can't read it now unless you have read Genesis. But you're listening to the Buff, so you will be able to do that once you're done here. So what follows after this verse 16 was the one about him staying east of Eden. What follows is Cain settling in this land of Nod. Apparently that is the place of wanderers. Okay. What follows is a genealogy of Cain and his family. And it says, so-and-so beget, so-and-so beget. Okay. So it's interesting if you like that sort of thing. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to move right ahead to the end of the chapter, which ends with 2 verses on a rather high note, which is always nice because it gives us a good cliffhanger. Adam again had intercourse with his wife, and she gave birth to a son whom she called Seth. God has granted me another offspring in place of Abel, she said, because Cain killed him. To Seth, in turn, a son was born, and he named him Enosh. At that time, people began to invoke the Lord by name. So Seth as a name means to replace. So Seth has replaced Abel. He is now supposedly a worthy successor. We would hope he's not a successor of Cain. And he replaces him. Cain hasn't been, Cain left too. I mean, it's poor Adam and Eve. They lose both their kids, boom, just like that in one day, because Cain runs off and he's now wandering. Enosh means essentially human being or mankind, something like that. So we have a synonym for the man, for Adam. Okay. And from this line of people, we see that people start to call the Lord by name. They start to call him essentially Yahweh. And some sources that I read said that this name has been around long before Moses used it with the burning bush. Once again, this Cain and Abel story is a story of the nature of man and the relationship between man and God. It is wonderfully condensed. You can read it in about a minute and a half, but it's really, really rich with meaning. It is a story that is as pertinent today as any time in history. We see so much of this envy, and envy drives so much envy and pride, right? I deserve this because I am who I am. That's the pride. And the envy is he has what I want, so I will be mad at him. Abel didn't do anything wrong. Abel did what was good, and evil seeks to bring down the good. Abel is not your problem. You are your problem. I don't like to be the guy to tell you that, but that's it. And Abel's not my problem. I am my problem. God will show you the way, and he says it is right there in the quote to Cain: act rightly, and you will be accepted. Don't let sin, who lies in wait at the door, capture you and encourage you to tear others down. Instead, seek the good, live virtuously, act rightly, and flourish. You will be accepted. Enjoy the adventure of life.
It's going to be a great day.